You might not know the LA Kings can lay claim to the greatest comeback in a playoff game in NHL history. You might not know that comeback win helped lead to maybe the greatest playoff series upset in NHL history. Today, we talk about the miracle on Manchester on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com. You'll get 50% off your first year. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years. I'm also one of the co-hosts of Locked On NHL Game Night. Right now, we're doing a preview of all 32 NHL teams during the offseason. And I'm a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Now, if you are an LA Kings fan, it is likely, regardless of when you became a fan, you've at least heard of the miracle on Manchester. But how much do you really know about that huge moment in Kings history and even NHL history? Now, it's unlikely you were at the game or maybe even saw it on TV. I've been a Kings fan for over 30 years, and it was before my time. The miracle on Manchester took place 43 years ago on April 10th, 1982. The LA Kings were in the playoffs against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, going into that first round playoff series, the Kings had lost in the first round of the playoffs 4 years in a row. Sounds familiar. But this was the first ever meeting in the playoffs between the Kings and Oilers. Certainly, they've met many, many times since then, including the last 4 years in a row. But this was pretty much a David versus Goliath matchup. While Edmonton had not yet won a Stanley Cup, they were on their ascent as the team of the decade, one of the best dynasties in modern NHL history. They would go on to win 5 Stanley Cups in 7 seasons from 1984 to 1990. But in that 1982 season, the Oilers were still really good. They had the best record during the regular season in the Western Conference, posting 111 points. That was the second best point total in the NHL, second only to the eventual Stanley Cup champion New York Islanders. Meanwhile, the Kings were the team with the fewest points that qualified for the playoffs. They had just 63 points that season. Now, the Oilers posted a regular season record of 48, 17, and 15. The Kings were 24, 41, and 15. As you would imagine, Edmonton was a heavy favorite to win a best-of-5 first-round series against the Los Angeles Kings. However, in Game 1, the Kings outscored the highest-scoring team in the NHL, and Edmonton did have 8 goals, but the Kings had 10 in a 10-8 upset win. The two teams combined for 7 first-period goals. The Oilers had a 4-3 lead after the first period. Kings would score 5 goals in the second period to Edmonton's 2 and grabbed an 8-6 lead. The two teams would each score 2 goals in the third period, LA scoring the final 2 after the Oilers tied it up. Charlie Simmer scored the game-winning goal, while Marcel Dion and Daryl Evans each had 2 goals in the game. We will hear from Daryl Evans coming up in just a couple of minutes. Game 2 saw the Oilers draw even in a game that was not nearly as high scoring as Game 1. Edmonton getting a 3-2 overtime win. Wayne Gretzky's second goal of the game was the game winner in sudden death. The Oilers even the series at 1-1 heading to Los Angeles. That set up Game 3, the miracle on Manchester game. And things did not start off well for LA as the Oilers took an early 2-0 first period lead on goals by Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. It got worse in the second period as the Oilers extended the lead to 5-0 with 3 more goals, including another one by the Great One. However, things would change in the third. Now, just 2 minutes and 48 seconds into the period, Jay Wells would score the Kings' first goal to at least spoil a shutout bid by Edmonton netminder Grant Fuhrer. At 5 minutes and 58 seconds of the third period, the Kings made it 5-2 with a Doug Smith power play goal. At 14:38, LA scored again. Charlie Simmer made it 5-3, and suddenly the Fabulous Forum was alive with hope of a miracle comeback. Just a minute 19 later, Mark Hardy scored for the Kings to make it 5-4, and suddenly it seemed like a historic comeback was within reach. With just 5 seconds left in regulation, on the power play and with the goalie pulled for a 2-man advantage, LA's Steve Bozak scored to unbelievably tie the game at 5-5 as the Kings scored 5 unanswered third period goals to send the game into sudden death overtime. Then just 2 minutes and 35 seconds into OT, rookie Daryl Evans scored right off a faceoff to win the game and cap the greatest comeback in NHL playoff history with the Kings' 6-5 victory. No team in the NHL has trailed at any point of a game in the playoffs by 5 goals and come back to win, much less being down 5 in the third period to come back to win. As a matter of fact, there's never been another instance where a team had been down 4 goals in the third period and came back to win a playoff game. That's how big this comeback was by the LA Kings. It's a record that may never be broken. Down 5 goals in the third period, come back to win a playoff game. It's a pretty big moment in NHL history, obviously a huge moment in LA Kings history. Now, some might have thought the Miracle on Manchester game was a game that won a series for the Kings. No, LA still had to win one more game to advance in the second round. And in game 4 in LA, the Oilers picked up the 3-2 win to even the series at 2-2 and force a deciding game 5 back in Edmonton. In the opening period of that deciding game, the Kings had a 3-2 lead. Kings then outscored the Oilers 3-0 in the decisive second period, getting goals from Bernie Nichols, Marcel Dion, and Dan Bernard. Game then saw the Kings take a 6-2 lead into the third, and then they would hold on for a 7-4 win to take the series 3-2 and advance into the second round in a huge upset win. Now, based on point differential during the regular season, with the Oilers having 48 more points than the Kings, that series upset win can be considered the biggest upset in NHL playoff history. Again, no team had ever had a bigger differential in points from the regular season to the postseason, and the team that had the fewer points ended up pulling off the upset win. So that's the greatest differential in playoff history. Some could consider the Columbus Blue Jackets playoff series win over the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2019 maybe a bit bigger. Now, that series, the Lightning were the President's Trophy winners. Columbus was the number 2 wildcard team. Columbus did sweep the Lightning out of the first round, and that was their first ever playoff series victory. But the two teams were separated by 30 points in the regular season. And again, the Kings and Oilers were separated by 48 points. So there's certainly an argument to be made, but there is no argument that that LA Kings playoff series win over the Oilers is one of the greatest upsets in NHL playoff history. The Kings have not had a ton of great postseason success when you look at the totality of their franchise. However, as far as having great moments, that upset series win over the Oilers, the reverse sweep of San Jose in 2012, the Kings have posted some pretty historic playoff series wins. And there is no question the single greatest comeback in a playoff game in NHL history owned by the LA Kings was the Miracle on Manchester. Up next, we're going to talk to a man that played a major role in that upset series win over the Oilers and definitely one of the heroes of the Miracle on Manchester, Daryl Evans, on this edition of Locked on LA Kings, your team every day. You just realized your business needs to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast, easy? Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored job posts put your post at the top of the page to help you reach the right candidates faster. If you've been in a spot where you need to hire right away, the pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback, that's exactly when Indeed sponsored job posts come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. And now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. We are excited to welcome back to the show Kings longtime analyst and former player Daryl Evans. Daryl, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Eddie. Always a pleasure to talk with you. And, the summer's winding down and looking forward to the season coming up.
Certainly we are as well, believe me, especially this time of the year. There's not a ton to talk about, but we can do some special shows, which is what we're doing with you today. Normally we're talking about, obviously, what's going on with the Kings, but Today, we're talking about specifically a great moment in Kings history, pretty good moment for you personally as well, and that is the miracle on Manchester, which you were a major part of. Let's just start off with the feeling of the team going into the series against the Oilers and Wayne Gretzky, of course. And the Oilers weren't quite yet the Oilers of winning a lot of Stanley Cups, but they were on their way, and they had a great season that year. The Kings didn't. The Kings had the fewest points of any team that made it into the playoffs. The Oilers were the Western Conference champs. So I know that was your rookie year, so you didn't have any playoff experience to kind of draw from, but what were your feelings going into, obviously it was going to be a huge challenge for the Kings, that playoff series?
Well, no doubt, always a lofty challenge when you look at a team that has the likes of a Wayne Gretzky or something like that on it. That you've got a lofty task in front of you. But I think when you look at that series, and I remember because I got called up for the last 14 games of the year during the regular season before the playoffs started, and the separation between the 2 points was 46 points between the two teams going into the playoffs. So the Kings were definitely, of course, the underdog. They had nothing to lose, where all the pressure was on the Oilers. And I think that was the approach that we took as a team, that let's just go out there and give it our best, and we'll see what happens. And of course, the way game one started out in Edmonton, it started out just like everybody thought it was going to be. And Edmonton jumped out to a big lead, and they were dominating the game. And it looked like it was going to be 3 games, and that was going to be the end of it. But we battled back in that game, and game one was one heck of a game. I know we're going to talk about the miracle on Manchester, but game one was one heck of a game. You look at it, combined between the two teams, 18 goals scored in the game. Kings win 10-8. That's the most goals combined by two teams in a playoff game in NHL history. And that was my first playoff game, and I was fortunate enough to have 2 goals and 2 assists. I remember being named this the first star of the game, and what a way to start off as a 21-year-old. It was just just a great start, and that's a game I'll never forget as well.
No doubt about it. And you're right. What a start to the series. And obviously that era of hockey was a bit more wide open than we're used to. But even for that era, as you said, that was even an extreme game, wasn't it?
No doubt about it. It was a run and gun style of hockey. You gave up a lot of chances. You got a lot of chances. And, again, we were up against one of the league's best in the Edmonton Oilers. Even though they hadn't established themselves as champions yet, they had they had all the ingredients to become champions. And at the end of the day, the Kings won the series, but I think in the big scheme of things, the Edmonton Oilers were a team that that won and benefited the most from that, because they went on to win Stanley Cup championships, and they learned a lot about their team. So that was a hard lesson for them, that series, but an enjoyable one for the Kings. And like I said, I think both took a lot from that series, and it was special in a lot of different ways.
So you mentioned the Kings win game one 10-8, lose the second game 3-2 in overtime. Obviously a very different game in that one. Then you come home though for games 3 and 4. And unfortunately in game 3, you find yourselves down 5-0 after the second period. What do you remember about being in that situation?
Well, again, we'd already accomplished more than we thought we were ever going to do, and that was we had already won a game in Edmonton. It was only a short series, a 5-game series. So, it was boiled down to a 2 out of 3. So, in game 3, being down by 5, with Edmonton having won game 2, I think everybody felt like, okay, the series had finally settled in. Edmonton found a way. They won game 2. Gretzky scores in overtime, and now they're dominating in game 3. It looks like game 3 is over after 40 minutes. And our approach going into the third period was, all right, we're back at home. We owe our fans more than what we've shown them so far in 40 minutes. So let's go out, let's win a period, and try to build some momentum for the next game. And I think that was the mindset that we approached it with, and we felt good about it. Like, I didn't sense any frustration from our group that, oh my God, this is embarrassing, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. I thought we approached it pretty good, that we were going to go out, not worry about what had happened in the first 40 minutes, and focus on what was ahead of us, and that was the final 20 minutes. And I thought we did a good job of preparing ourselves for that. And of course, a lot had to happen, and had to be, a special type of period. And I think the early goal by Jay Wells, set the tone. I think had it gone a little bit longer into that period, without scoring a goal. I think the Edmonton Oilers would have settled in a little bit more, but I think that early goal, give us a little bit of life and got our fans into the game, something they hadn't been able to do for the first two periods.
So you get the game equalizer in the final seconds, and then it goes into overtime. Yes, certainly momentum is on your side, but it's next goal wins. Do you kind of remember, though, what it felt like waiting for that overtime period to start?
Well, at the 9:56 mark of the third period, myself along with a bunch of teammates and a bunch of the Oiler players, we were set off, escorted to the locker rooms. We received 10-minute misconducts. So we weren't even I wasn't even on the bench or in the arena bowl for the final 9:56 of the third period. We were watching the game on TV and listening to it
Huh.
on the speakers, and then at that point it was 5-2. Then we got a goal made it 5-3, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, this is a pretty respectable game now. We're winning the period 3-0. We're down by 2, and it's not bad. And still a lot had to happen. And then Gary Younger took a 5-minute major penalty that put us on the power play for the rest of the game. Once we made it 5-4, now the question was there going to be enough time on the clock? And again, not being like in the bowl, it seemed like we were on a different planet, like we were so removed from what was happening on the ice. And yet,
Wow.
through the walls of the arena and all that, we're probably 50 feet away from the action, but it felt like we were nowhere near it. But the guy, I remember we were listening to Bob Miller, Nick Nixon. They were calling the game, and the energy in their voices and the way they were calling it, coming through the PA in the locker room and all that. And it was something. And I remember we were saying with the guys, and the guys were talking about getting undressed when we went in there, and it was 5-2, and I felt like, let's see what happens here. We still got a chance, and something special did happen. But I remember just to myself, and I remember just talking to the guys there, and I just want to get one chance to be able to play in overtime. Give me a chance, give me a shot. Let me get a shot, and eventually that come about. But even in the opening moments in overtime, the Oilers, Mario Lessard went out to chase down a puck near the blue line. He didn't play it right, and the Oilers got it, and then he had to scramble to get back to the net. I think it was Messier, if I'm not mistaken. He was on the ice, and they backhanded, coming down the other side. And this was in the opening seconds of the period. So it could have been all over right off the bat. And at that point, we were in the penalty box because we couldn't come out till the first whistle after 4 seconds. So it was really intense. But it was something. And at times it seems like it was yesterday, and at times it seemed like it never happened.
Well, you did get your chance in overtime, and you made the most of it. I'm sure you've done this many times before. Explain how the play happened and you got the game-winning goal in overtime.
Well, we were on the bench, and Don Perry, he was our coach, and we're talking about what lines were going up and things like that. And I remember the puck being dumped in on Grant Fuhr. And Grant Fuhr had the option to play the puck, like put it over in the corner, let the defense go get it, maybe try to shoot it out on his own. He elected to hang on to it, which caused an offensive zone faceoff for ourselves. And then that's when Don Perry made the choice of putting out Doug Smith at center, Steve Bozak on the left side, and then he put me out on the right side. And I still can hear Bob Miller saying an all rookie front line, with Smith, Bozak, and Evans. And we lined up, and at that time in the NHL, the way the rinks were painted, there was only one hash mark, and both players used to be right up against each other. Kevin Lowe was a defenseman that I was up against, so I'm on my offside, so I've got my stick out in the middle of the ice. And Kevin Lowe, of course, has got a stick in my midsection. He's holding, he's kind of hooking me a little bit, and making sure that I'm not going to get away from him. So I end up backing off of him for about 2 or 3 feet, which left myself free. And then Doug Smith, he probably couldn't have taken the puck and placed it with his hand any better than he did by winning the draw the way he did. He drew the puck back between his legs, and just the right speed, and it was just coming back. And because I was playing on my off wing, I just come in and I just put the puck in the direction of the net. And as I made contact, all I could see was the net bulging, and it happened. And then I just took off and went the other way. I was so excited, and my teammates chased me down the ice. I don't think I've ever skated the length of the ice any quicker than I did after scoring that goal. And we all piled up down at the other end of the rink and celebrated a moment that was not only special that night, but turned out to be a special moment in Stanley Cup playoff history, something that had never been accomplished before.
Certainly, no doubt about that. We're going to talk more about that series and that moment with Daryl Evans here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Continuing with Kings broadcaster and former player Daryl Evans. Daryl, I personally have not had a lot of glory in my athletic career. I was one of those guys who was like a role player or played a position that wasn't, like an offensive lineman, things like that. But I had in my whole life, I had a couple of moments. I had like a game-winning home run, and I scored one touchdown on defense. I recovered a fumble and I scored. And those two moments, I remember them well, but I don't know if it was the adrenaline that went through my body. It happened quickly. Like, it seemed like it happened a lot faster than it probably really happened. I know some great athletes have said in key moments, sometimes the game slows down for them. Do you, in that moment, when you scored that goal, was it something that you vividly remember, or was almost kind of like a blur?
No, I think it was something that especially like now, like maybe at the moment, I probably couldn't, but I don't know whether it's a combination of having watched it so many times and kind of relived it so many times, but it seemed like it slowed down because, again, just lining up for the faceoff. And I remember, being right up against Kevin Lowe and then having to separate myself from him. And so that, that moment, that took away like moments to be able to set things up, kind of set the stage. And then Doug Smith winning the draw, just the way he won it almost seemed like it came back in slow motion. It was basically put on a tee for me, and I just went in and just put the puck in a direction. Then everybody says, "Oh, is that the spot you were trying to pick?" And of course, I'm, if I was, being honest with you, of course that wasn't, I was just putting the puck to the net. I needed to get the puck off my stick as quick as I could. If I knew where the hell I was putting it, I'd probably still be playing. But I just put the puck at the net, and there was a quick rising shot. It ends up going over his shoulder and finds the back of the net. But I mean, again, we're talking a game of inches. I mean, that it could have hit a stick, going through. There's a little bit of traffic there. Could have hit Grant Fuhr in the shoulder. Could have gone off the crossbar. A lot of things could have happened. But I think for that moment, things did slow down. And then they picked right up again because next thing I know, I was down at the other end of the rink. I remember taking off and raising my stick in the air and hearing the fans. And then I was, dogpiled by my teammates. And, I think we all live for moments like that, in our career, regardless of what sport that you play, that you always want to have that, the big stage. And as a kid, a 21-year-old, it's, you can't dream of things like that. And I was able to live a dream that is something I'll never forget.
So kind of like the miracle on ice when the U.S. hockey team won gold, beat the Soviets. A lot of people think that huge upset was for the gold medal, but it wasn't. That was to play for the gold medal. They had to beat Finland, which they did. Same thing, your overtime game-winning goal, that didn't end the series. You guys still had to win another game, and you lost the next game. So it forced the deciding Game 5 back in Edmonton, which the Kings were able to win. What do you remember about having to go up to Edmonton to win 2 games in the series to capture the series?
Well, the only reason, like when we went out for that face-off, the only reason that I shot it the way I did is I thought we were going to be awarded the Stanley Cup with a win on that shot, but that didn't happen. So no, I just so we win the game, and then Game 4, which is 2 days later in LA, Edmonton wins 3-2. So now it's ironic. We've played 4 games in the series. We're tied 2-2. The Kings have won the 10-8 game and the 6-5 game, and the Oilers have won 2 games 3-2.
That's
And they were the
right.
highest scoring team in the NHL that year.
Yeah.
And there's really no plan for a game 5. I don't think anybody expected this series to go to 5 games. Both teams flew on the same charter going to Edmonton that night for game 5. It was the quietest plane ride I've ever been on. And we flew into Edmonton, and it was still a cold, April day in Edmonton, and they had some fans there that were giving us the business when we got to the hotel, and told us that we wasted our time coming back to Edmonton, and we go on and we win that game. We dominate that game. We win it. It was 7-4 was the final score, but I think we had a 7-2 lead at one time. And again, the amount of goals that we scored and the way that we were able to hold Edmonton as down to his field goals, it was something special. But again, a big lesson learned by the Edmonton Oilers. We all know what they went on to do the years after that. But at the time in hockey history, that was something real special. And just playing in Edmonton, and and just walking around in Canada, just hearing the media all the time, the news, the sports channels, and everything. And to just to kind of be the spoiler in that series, yeah, it was nice. It was very gratifying.
You had 5 goals in that 5-game series. Not only did you have the overtime game winner in game 3, but also obviously the series. You had a very good series as well. And not only were you a part of what is the greatest comeback in NHL playoff history, but that series, you mentioned it earlier, there was a 46-point disparity between the Oilers and the Kings in the regular season. I believe that's the biggest disparity in playoff history. And of course, you guys win the series. So not only was it a great individual moment and comeback in that one game, but winning that series was arguably the biggest upset in NHL playoff history as well.
And I think maybe that's what makes it that much more special and magnifies it. We, of course, we're and we all have a selfish part to ourselves where we want to make sure, or not make sure, but we want to see ourselves excel and do special things. But when you can do something special and your team reaps the rewards because of it, then it makes it real special. And in that case, there, I think if we go on, like, let's just say a miracle on Manchester, but if we lose the next 2 games, I don't think it carries quite as much weight. The fact that we went on and, won the series and eliminated the Oilers, I think it just carries a little bit more weight because of it. And, again, for whatever reason, it was a crazy night. And I remember, I had on that particular day, earlier in the day, I was staying at the hotel because I'd just been called up, so I was still in the hotel. I hadn't even, been given a place to, or the okay to go get a place to stay. And I got a call. I had a message after the pregame skate in the morning from a gentleman by the name of Carl Johnson, and Carl Johnson was my billet family boarder in junior hockey in Niagara Falls, and that was in my second year of in junior. And he left me a message that, hey, my friend of mine, pardon me, my wife and I were visiting my Army friend, down in San Diego. Any chance we can get tickets to the game tonight? So I called him back and I said, Mr. Johnson, I said, I can only get 2 tickets. It's sold out. It's the first playoff game. This is the Miracle on Manchester. And he says, okay. And he says, I'm coming. He said, I'm not sure if Mildred, my wife's coming, or my Air Force buddy's coming, but we're coming to the game. I said, okay, perfect. He says, can we see you after the game? I said, okay. I said, I'll leave you a pass. I said, I'll meet you, wherever they tell you to go with the pass, and I'll be there. Perfect. Well, after 2 periods, his Air Force buddy, he's looking at the scoreboard and he goes, Carl, he goes, let's go. He says, San Diego's a long way away.
Oh,
He says,
no.
we got a long drive. He says, let's hit the road. And Carl Johnson says, he goes, he says, you go ahead. He says, I'm staying. He says, you see the little guy there with the beard? And he says, he told me you never leave a game till it's over. Well, eventually he talked him into staying. And then I met them both later. And the guy says, he goes, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it for myself. He said, I wanted to stay and shake your hand. And what I should have done is I should have bought Carl Johnson season tickets wherever I went to play. He should have been in the building wherever I went, because magic happened with him in the building. But so that was that's why that game sticks out so vividly.
How often does the miracle in Manchester come up, just like in your day-to-day life? Does it come up, every once in a while, or how often do you get to talk about it or
You
remember
have
it?
to talk about it a lot more than a lot of people think. It's
Yeah.
of course, I didn't have a long career where I played a lot of games. So when people, in fact, just yesterday, I had a gentleman come in from Chicago, and we were talking in the parking lot, and he goes, "Oh," he goes, "You played?" He goes, "Oh my God, la la la." And he goes, I'm gonna look at look something up on I'll look you up after we talk because we were in he goes, "My phone's in the car." And it's nice to meet you and this and that. And he was in for a concert with his daughter and that. And not 30, 40 minutes come by, and they're, a couple of the other coaches and counselors saying, your friend's in the parking lot. He's looking for you. I said, "Oh my God." He goes, and he's waving. I go out in the parking lot. He goes, "I can't believe it." He says, "You were that guy, and this and that." So it's just, again, special memories. And because of, again, such a special game. Yeah, okay, I was fortunate enough that I was the one that was there, but it's moments like that in our game that make our game special and make our fans special. And when they can relate to things like that, whether it's me or whoever's, creating and being part of the moment, it's really nice. And so I love to hear that kind of stuff. And of course, every year when the playoffs start in April, it always gets, they bring it back up again. And then every once in a while, when you see a team that's got a lead or something like that, and going, "Oh, remember back," and they'll reflect back and going back. But we've gone through 43 years of playoffs, and at that time of year, April, it seems to really come to the forefront, and there's a lot of talk about it, and I'll never get tired talking about it.
Daryl, this was a lot of fun. Really appreciate your time and talking about one of the greatest goals in Kings history, one of the greatest moments, one of the greatest playoff series wins in Kings history and NHL history as well. Thanks for sharing some of your memories. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk again before the season gets going, which we're all looking forward to. But thanks for doing this. Always appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Eddie. Keep up the great work, and can't wait for the season to get going. I'll look forward to seeing you in person soon.
That'll do it for today's show. For you everydayers, those who listen and watch Locked on LA Kings every day, we will have our usual Friday fan feedback show coming up at the end of the week. If you want to get in on that, maybe share your memories of the miracle on Manchester. The email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You're always welcome to post your thoughts on the show if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section as well. And we'd love you to stay connected with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're at Locked on LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thanks for listening and watching this episode of Locked on LA Kings, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next time. As always, go Kings, go.